Skipping last week's chapter and reading it with this week's back-to-back was the best decision I've ever made. Because going into chapter 1103, all of the raw emotions, the anger, the despair, the sadness that the rest of the fandom felt a week ago was still fresh for me. So, in the second half of this chapter, when we finally cut back to Saturn and Bonney, I wanted nothing more than to see this old man be put in the ground. Like, I thought after seeing Kuma's whole backstory and how involved in making Kuma's life miserable Saturn was, that there was nothing more he could do to make me hate him even more. But that Saturn, ooh, he had to just dig a bit deeper and find those little bits of extra hatred that I didn't know I had in me, because in chapter 1102, he orders Vegapunk to install a self-destruct switch inside of Kuma, just to make sure that if he ever goes out of their control, they won't have to worry about his rampaging. Which, okay, to be completely fair to Saturn, that was a smart decision. Gotta make sure your semi-indestructible murder machine doesn't go completely Terminator on you, and if it does, you have to have a way to stop it. But we really don't like Saturn here, so even his smart decisions we're going to write off as being completely trash. And Saturn, he had a chance, he had the opportunity to gain some favor with the fandom, because Vegapunk comes to him and begs Saturn to let him install another switch that will allow them to switch Kuma's personality back on. But Saturn, this old man, he's just determined to play the villain and shoots down Vegapunk's idea instantly, killing off even the tiniest hope of possibility that he could have any redemption in the eyes of us fans. And then, that's it. Kuma's last chance of freedom, of saving even a little bit of himself, gone by the orders of his lifelong antagonist, leading to one of the most heartbreaking sequences of the entire chapter, where we see Kuma throughout his life running towards eternity, with snapshots of the people most important to him playing in his head. And you know what, I'm probably not the only one who felt this way, but I honestly got a little bit teary-eyed when Kuma starts to stumble a bit after remembering Jenny, only to pick himself back up and run tall and proud at the thought of Bonney, showing that despite signing away his life, he can stand proud as a father because he did it to save his daughter. And his final words before being completely erased is asking Vegapunk to tell Bonney happy birthday. And look, if all of that didn't make you cry even a little bit, then I honestly don't know what will. I honestly don't think going forward that there will ever be a character in One Piece whose backstory will make me feel the same way I feel after reading Kuma's. And there might not ever be, in my opinion, a better fodder in the show than him. Which, I mean, to be fair, that's not exactly hard when you look at all the other fodders in the series. But still, even amongst the actual good ones like Whitebeard, Kuma's still the gold standard of fodders. And speaking of fodders, going to the complete other end of the spectrum, we might have met the absolute worst one in all of One Piece. Now, I want to clarify, this is going solely off of the fan translation of the chapter, since as the recording of this video, the official chapter won't be out for a little over a week, and what I'm about to say could be proven wrong when it does, but based on Saturn's dialogue in this chapter, it's heavily implied that he is Bonney's biological father. To be accurate, he specifically mentions Jenny being kidnapped to become wife number 8, but never clarifies wife to who, and that she was brought in to be part of his experiments. So again, reading between the lines, it implies that he was the one who did the horrible thing that happened to her, and that Bonney was conceived solely to be experimented on. Which, on the one hand, we finally get an answer to how Bonney got her devil fruit powers despite the devil fruit never being shown on screen. That's great, one mystery solved. But on the other hand, this whole thing is incredibly gross. And like, I already had a seething hatred for Saturn going into 1103, but just every line of dialogue he had in this chapter just made me hate him more and more. The way he belittled Kuma's sacrifice and made sure to destroy every bit of confidence that Bonney had in herself, it was just maddening to read. But again, I have to unfortunately give Saturn at least a little bit of credit, because he realized that the more Bonney believes in a possible future, the stronger her ability is. So making her question and doubt if Nika is actually real made her unable to stand against him. Which again, unfortunately, makes the strategy that he uses against her in this chapter, while incredibly evil and very much a dick move, still, it's a smart one. But that being said, he's just lucky that Bonney was conveniently never around or conscious when Luffy was in Gear 5. So she could never connect the dots by seeing him and realizing that he is actually Nika. Because had she, then his plan would never have worked, and Saturn even says so himself in the chapter. But unfortunately, she didn't, so it does, and with all her strength gone, Bonney gives in. She gives up any hope of avenging her father, and accepts that she's going to die at Saturn's hands. And I honestly am looking forward to and dreading seeing this scene in the anime. Dreading it because I've honestly grown to really like Bonney during this arc, even before the flashback, so to see her get destroyed emotionally and mentally in this chapter it's really going to hit hard when we actually see it in the anime. But I'm also looking forward to it because along with every moment we get of Saturn breaking Bonney's will, we get a shot of Kuma getting closer and closer to where they are. Until eventually, just as Saturn's about to finish her off, Kuma arrives just in time to save his daughter. I feel pretty confident in saying that we all cheered when we got to this part of the chapter, because we've been waiting for this to happen for basically the entire arc. Kuma's finally on Egghead, and we now know why he was heading there, to protect Bonney. Which obviously brings up the question of how Kuma knew Bonney was a danger in the first place, and how he has enough of his personality left to rush to her defense. But those are questions we'll likely have answered in the next few chapters. For now, let's just all enjoy this moment where we have the two of them finally reuniting. Now, as epic as Kuma's entrance was, if we're being completely honest, he doesn't really stand a chance of defeating Saturn alone. Not while he's as damaged as he is, and even if he could, there's still the issue of the self-destruct switch. At any point, Saturn could flip that and bye-bye Kuma. You know, assuming that Vegapunk actually put one in him, which honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Vegapunk pulled the old switcheroo on Saturn, and instead of installing the kill switch, instead put in the one that returns Kuma back to himself. Because one thing I've seen people misinterpret, and it's possibly due to them going off the fan translation, I don't know, I didn't read one of those, but one thing that everyone I've seen talk about 1102 assume is that because Bonney took Kuma's memory bubble into herself, that he'll never be able to get those memories back. But in the official translation of the chapter, Kuma makes a note to say that he's only copying his memories, not expelling them. So, if Vegapunk did decide to disobey this one order from Saturn and made it possible for Kuma to regain himself, then we might still be able to get that emotional reunion between him and Bonney that we've been hoping to get. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong, Kuma is not making it off Egghead. He is almost certainly going to end up dying in this battle against Saturn, but it's looking more and more likely that he'll at least get to die as a human. And if the person who got him the food that just happened to appear out of nowhere, almost as if someone who can move at light speed brought it to him before anyone noticed he moved, but if that person is the one who actually did bring Luffy the food, then we can expect him to sit out of the remainder of this fight, meaning Luffy's one and only target will be Saturn. Which means that Luffy taking down one of the 5 elders is likely going to be the inciting incident that will shake the world we heard about in the beginning of this arc. And, more importantly, that guarantees that Bonney will be joining the crew post Egghead. But that whole her joining the crew thing is a discussion for a whole nother video that I will end up making at some point before the next chapter comes out. But let me know in the comment section down below what you guys thought about this chapter and what you think will be coming up next in chapter 1104.